So I was born in Washington, D.C., the United States, and my parents are of Cameroonian descent. So they moved to the U.S. When they were teenagers at 18, 19 years old for college. And they met there and they had kids there, which is why I was born. So of Cameroonian descent, growing up in the United States. However, when my dad graduated and mom graduated from college, my dad had a hard time finding a job at that time. He only worked at restaurants. He studied architecture, and he felt we would be able, as a family, have a much richer life if we moved back to Cameroon. And being much richer life, that means a variety of things. Obviously, he wanted a good job. He had an American degree, but also with the even the food that we ate, the life that we lived. If we lived in Cameroon, for example, we would have assistance at home with grandma and grandpa and uncles and aunts and cousins and all of that. So you would live a much richer life knowing where you're actually from, and then eating food that's was grown right there. While in the US, a lot of the food is processed. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, food I know was food that was from the supermarkets or McDonald's or Popeye's chicken,
Yeah.
and who knows where all that comes from. But as a kid, I didn't know anything better. I liked my pancakes in the morning. I liked Popeye's chicken and McDonald's and all that. And then in 1992, we moved to Cameroon. And
How old
at
were
that
you?
time, I was 9 years old. At that time, there was none of that. McDonald's wasn't even a word. There was no processed food. All the food was food that was grown locally, sourced locally, and had to be eaten that day. And for a 9 year old, that's a very difficult thing to go from McDonald's, always available, always open, processed, to only eating things that were of season in
So it kind of
the
forced you to eat more nutritionally and be healthier in general.
exactly. But again, from the mentality of a 9 year old, I did not understand that. I was just like, what is all this? What is this? And yeah, the food in West Africa is, so you first have to understand the climate. It is subtropical, humid, and hot all year round. So you have rainy season and you have dry season. So you have foods that are of season in the dry season. You have foods that are of season in the rainy season, and you eat based on what's in season. And then it's hot all the time, and this is tropical heat, right? So food spoils quite quickly as well. So when a family is preparing food, you're thinking about, first of all, you go to the market, you go to the local market. All the food there is food that was harvest literally that week or maybe even that day, and you're selling it right there. There's no preservatives, nothing to make it look clean or washed, or this is literally taken from the ground,
Completely fresh.
from completely fresh. Sometimes it has, caterpillars in it. It may have, maggots in it, or and some have nothing. It's just it's as natural as it gets. And that's what you go and you select your produce at the local market and you bring it home. And when you bring it home, the idea is to prepare that for that day. And usually you go to the market in the morning, so you're preparing food for lunch. And what you don't eat for lunch, you're finishing it for dinner. Because, and this goes into sort of food conservation, many people have fridges, but the fridges don't work very well because of the heat, because of the electricity. We get power outages all the time. So anything that requires electricity or energy is unreliable. So when it comes to food, it's best whatever you prepare that day, you finish it all that day. Don't put it in the freezer. Don't put it in the fridge because most likely it's going to spoil the next day and you don't want to waste. So there is very, very little waste in, I would say, African countries in general because of this situation with, difficult climate for to conserve, and then the lack of reliable source of energy that can help preserve the food. With electricity, with energy, that type of energy, you can do a lot of things. You can preserve a lot of things. You can make wine and keep it at a reliable temperature for the wine to last years. And people brag about how old their wine is, but it was old and tastes good because it was preserved for a long time. It was preserved for a long time because you were able to create the conditions for it to be preserved for that long, and that requires energy, which in West Africa we don't have at a reliable in a reliable way. What we do have though is solar energy, and that is one thing that I believe we could leverage a little bit more, maybe create technologies with all the sun that we have to find ways to get a reliable source of energy, store that energy, and then we're able to preserve food longer. But at the moment, whatever we eat was harvested that day, cooked that day, and we have to finish that day so that we're not wasting.
Is it still like that now, or was that just?
I would say it's still like that now because just recently, as 2 years ago, I still went to my mom's house, and she has a fridge and she has a freezer, and her fridge is basically empty because the fridge is not cold enough to keep anything cold enough to, and so most people have a deep freezer, and then the deep freezer that works relatively well because the deep freezer, even if you lose power, if you keep the deep freezer closed, it will keep the cold in. And so if you spend 24 hours without energy, you will still have cold food. While with the fridge, just within hours, things can spoil. So yeah, I would say it's still that way.
Also, do you think that like culturally, since you did it that way back then, you still kind of return back to the same customs? And
yeah, when it comes to, so we have this, as a child you're always told to eat all your food, right? They make you a plate of food, and you can't the back of your mind, you're as a parent, you cannot throw it away, so you kind of force your kids to eat all your food. All the food that's in your plate, you must finish it. But you never really think about like the background, where that comes from. Where that comes from is because we can't keep it. We can't just throw this in the fridge and then you can eat it tomorrow, or it'll have to go through the trash, and you don't want to do that. It'll go spoil. So I still have that mentality of always making sure whatever's in my plate, I eat it. No, I know that we can save it in the fridge, but it's just like from childhood, finish your food, finish what's in front of you, because it could go bad, and yet you've wasted food. So yeah, it is still very much like that.
have you ever dealt with like any food shortages when you were little too?
Not really, because we live in the city. But for those who live well, first of all, let's go back. So growing up in Cameroon, in a tropical climate, we are blessed with a ton of food that grows. It's the tropics. Everything grows. You've got mangoes, guavas, all types of tropical fruits. You have all sorts of, leaves and vegetation that can be used to eat. You have mushrooms, and then you have wildlife for protein. You've got everything. So we are kind of spoiled with the abundance of potential food sources. We are spoiled that way. And then, so there is no shortage of food. But if you're thinking about, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that sort of thing doesn't really exist when you go into the villages, really. You eat what you can catch. So, you go to the river, if you catch some fish, that's what you're eating. You make a fire, that's what you're eating, that's what you're feeding your family with. If you catch a deer or a wild boar or whatever, cut it up, You cook it, that's what you're eating. There is no 3-course meal or we have to eat. You catch what you eat can eat. And so you eat when you can catch it. So if you wake up when you wake up in the morning in the villages, what the first thing you do is you go out and catch some food. Whatever you catch, you bring it to your family and you cook and you eat. So we are blessed that we have food. You just have to go work for it. So I have a degree in biochemistry and a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, master's degree in epidemiology. And I work in market access for a surgical robotics company. And what does market access means? Understanding healthcare systems and trying to solve problems that unlocks the access of medicines and technologies to patients. And because there are lots of systemic problems that cause patients not to have access to maybe the best care. And so us in market access, we try to identify what are those problems and how to solve them. And so I do that at a European level. But yeah, I've always worked in healthcare and had an affinity for being in health, wanting to be a doctor at one point, going to medical school at one point, but really seeing more value. I could bring more value with my international background, with the languages I speak, and just with my interest in doing more and more research on science and health and how to help.
What gets you so interested in health then?
I've always been interested in health since I was a child, since I was a kid. Human anatomy, how the body works, how muscles grow, how the brain works, how to, that's always been something that has been very interesting to me. And so even as a kid, reading about it, and then just being really good at the sciences in school led me to go down this path of just continuing to study healthcare. And so I'm very happy that I chose that path, and very grateful to be in the position I'm in. Try to appreciate the food that comes to you on your plate. If you have an understanding of where your food actually comes from, I think people would appreciate food better. People would take time to prepare their food, even go as far as growing their own food. If you really knew where your food came from, most people would go as far as having their own little gardens to grow their own tomatoes and vegetables and plants. So you don't have to go to the grocery store, because God knows where that stuff came from, but at least you can have control over a lot of the stuff that you put into your body. And that's the most important thing. Everything you're putting into your body, you can control a lot of that, instead of putting some of the poisons that we get at supermarkets. And so just people should think more about what they put into their bodies, appreciate your body, and in order to take care of that, maybe finding ways to make sure that the food that comes into their plate has little to no preservatives, something that you've grown yourself, you've tried to collect yourself, and yeah, you'd enjoy food better that way.